The aroma of truffle and aged parmesan filled my office as I reviewed the latest acquisition proposal. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse restaurant, I could see the glittering skyline of Manhattan, a view that cost more than the $50 my parents had given me a decade ago. "Ms. Chen, your sister is in the lobby." My assistant's voice came through the intercom. "She doesn't have an appointment, but she's insisting it's about a family matter." I took a slow sip of my espresso, letting the bitter taste remind me of where I started. "How does she look, Maria?" "Nervous. She's wearing last season's channel and keeps checking her phone." "Last season's channel?" I smiled. "Things must be worse than I thought. Send her up in 10 minutes." I used those 10 minutes to study the financial reports of my family's restaurant chain, Golden Dynasty. Once the crown jewel of Asian fusion dining in New York, it was now drowning in debt and losing market share to my own chain, Nova Cuisine. The latest numbers showed their revenue had dropped 60% since last quarter. The elevator dinged and Sarah walked in, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor. My sister, once the golden child, looked older than her 35 years. Worry lines creased her forehead, and her perfectly manicured hands wouldn't stop fidgeting. "Lily," she said, trying to sound confident, "you look successful." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "That tends to happen when you build something from scratch instead of riding on family coattails." She flinched but sat down. Her eyes darted around my office, taking in the James Beard Awards, the Michelin star certificates, and the Forbes magazine cover featuring me as America's restaurant queen. "I assume this isn't a social visit," I said, keeping my voice neutral, "considering we haven't spoken since Dad's 65th birthday 3 years ago." That was unfortunate," she mumbled. "I shouldn't have said those things about your success being just luck." I leaned back in my chair, remembering that night. She had too much wine and started ranting about how I'd gotten lucky with my first restaurant, that my success was just timing and trends, not real skill like her traditional expertise. "Water under the bridge," I replied, though we both knew it wasn't. "What brings you here today?" She pulled out a folder, financial statements from what I could glimpse, and placed it on my desk with trembling hands. "We, Golden Dynasty, needs help. We, Mom, Dad, and me. The business, it's not doing well." I opened the folder, though I already knew what I'd find: 5 years of declining revenues, mounting debt, and failed attempts to modernize their traditional concept. The empire my grandfather had built, that my parents had maintained and that Sarah had been groomed to inherit, was crumbling. "I see," I said, closing the folder. "And you came to me because—" "Because your family," she whispered. "Because you understand restaurants. Because you're the only one who can help us." I stood and walked to my wine wall, selecting a bottle of Bordeaux that cost more than that initial $50 I'd been given. "Let's talk about family, shall we?" I poured 2 glasses and handed her one. 10 years ago, when grandfather died, there was a family meeting. Do you remember it?" She stared into her wine glass, avoiding my eyes. "Lily, that was a long time ago. I remember every detail," I continued, sitting on the edge of my desk. "I was 22, fresh out of culinary school, which I paid for by working 3 jobs, by the way. I had new ideas for modernizing our restaurants, blending traditional Asian flavors with contemporary techniques." I took a sip of wine, letting the memory surface. I presented my business plan to the family. Grandfather had always encouraged my cooking, my innovations, but he wasn't there anymore. Instead, it was you, Mom, and Dad, all looking at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "We were trying to protect the family legacy," Sarah said weakly. "No, you were protecting your inheritance." Dad stood up, handed you the papers worth $5.5 million in restaurant assets, and said you understood tradition. Then he turned to me, handed me a $50 bill, and said, "Go make your own legacy if you're so innovative." Sarah shifted uncomfortably. "We didn't know that I'd succeed, that I'd take that $50 and turn it into an empire, that I'd work 18-hour days in a food truck, sleeping in my car to save rent, that I'd perfect my fusion recipes until lines wrapped around the block." I walked to the window, looking down at the street where my first food truck used to park. You all laughed when I started, called my food confused, said I was disrespecting our heritage. Now my restaurants have more Michelin stars than Golden Dynasty ever did, and you're here asking for help. What do you want me to say? Sarah's voice cracked. That we were wrong? We were. That we underestimated you? We did. That I'm sorry? I am. I turned back to face her. I don't want you to say anything. I want you to understand something. Success isn't inherited, it's built. Legacy isn't given, it's earned. You got a $5.5 million head start and still failed. I got $50 and built a $980 million company. So you won't help. Tears welled in her eyes. I picked up the folder with their financials. I didn't say that. I'm a businesswoman. Everything has a price. Name it, she said quickly. Whatever you want. First, I want you, Mom, and Dad to understand exactly how I built my success. Every step, every struggle, every sacrifice. Second, if, and that's a big if, I decide to help, it won't be a rescue. It'll be a complete transformation. My way, my vision, my rules. But the traditional recipes, the old ways, are dying. I cut her off. Just like your revenue shows. Times change, Sarah. Food evolves. You can either evolve with it or become a cautionary tale in a business school textbook. I handed her a card with tomorrow's date and time written on it. Bring Mom and Dad to this address. It's where my food truck used to park. If you want my help, that's where we'll start. At the beginning. My beginning. She stared at the card, reality finally sinking in. You're going to make us work in a food truck? No, I smiled. I'm going to teach you what that $50 taught me, that true success tastes better when you've earned every ingredient. Sarah stood, clutching her wine glass like a lifeline. And if we refuse? Then Golden Dynasty dies its natural death and my company buys the remains at a bankruptcy auction. Your choice. As she walked to the elevator, shoulders slumped in defeat, I called after her, "Oh, and Sarah, bring comfortable shoes tomorrow. Standing at a food truck for 18 hours isn't kind to last season's channel." The elevator doors closed on my sister's shocked face, and I turned back to my view of the city. Somewhere out there, my parents were probably waiting for news of their golden child's success in securing help. They were about to learn that the daughter they dismissed had become the only one who could save their legacy. But first, they would learn how to build one. The next morning at 4 a.m., I stood beside my original food truck, now restored and parked in the same spot where my empire began. The pre-dawn air was crisp, carrying the same mix of hope and exhaust fumes I'd breathed a decade ago. My family arrived in Sarah's BMW, still clinging to appearances despite their financial reality. Mom wore what she probably thought was casual clothing, silk pants and a cashmere sweater. Dad had at least attempted practicality with Takis, though his Italian loafers would never survive kitchen work. Sarah had traded her channel for Lululemon, missing the point entirely. "Why are we here so early?" Mom asked, shivering more from the neighborhood than the cold. "Because prep starts at 4 a.m., I replied, unlocking the food truck. Or did you think those perfect dumplings at Golden Dynasty magically appeared every morning? We have prep chefs for that, Dad said dismissively. Had, I corrected. You had prep chefs. Before your labor costs ate 45% of your revenue. Today, you're the prep chefs. I handed each of them a set of basic chef's whites. Change in the truck, and Dad, those loafers won't work. Here are some proper kitchen shoes. While they changed, I set up the prep station just as I had thousands of times before. The muscle memory was still there, measuring rice, chopping vegetables, mixing marinades. The recipes I developed in this truck had built my empire, one $10 lunch at a time. What's that smell? Sarah emerged from the truck, her whites already wrinkled. Success, I said, handing her a cutting board and vegetables. Start dicing. Small cubes, consistent size, like the prep chefs you used to order around. Mom stared at the raw ingredients with something between confusion and disdain. Lily, this is beneath us. We're Chen family restaurateurs, not street vendors. No, I corrected her. You're failed restaurateurs who need to learn what real food service means. Start with the basics or go home and wait for bankruptcy. For the next 4 hours, I drilled them on proper prep techniques. Dad cut himself twice before learning to curl his fingers properly while chopping. Mom nearly cried when the garlic left its smell on her manicured hands. Sarah, surprisingly, showed some natural skill with a knife, when she stopped complaining. My hands hurt, she whined around hour 3. Mine hurt for 2 years straight, I replied. until calluses replaced the blisters, until the burns became badges instead of wounds, until I stopped counting the pain and started counting the customers. As the morning crowd began forming, I showed them my original menu, a fusion of our family's traditional recipes and modern techniques. This is what you called confused cuisine. Watch how confused these customers are when they line up around the block. The first rush hit at 11:30. Office workers, construction crews, students, all craving my signature dishes. I worked the walk while my family fumbled through service. Mom's horror at handling cash was almost comical. Dad couldn't remember orders. Sarah kept trying to explain the elevated concept to customers who just wanted their food. Stop talking, start cooking, I finally snapped at her. They're here for food, not a TED talk about fusion cuisine. By 3 p.m., they were exhausted, stained, and humbled. I counted the day's earnings, $1,200, nearly double what Golden Dynasty made on an average weekday lunch service, with a fraction of the overhead. Sit, I ordered, pointing to some milk crates behind the truck. Time for your first business lesson. I pulled out their latest financial statements. Golden Dynasty loses money because you forgot the fundamentals. You think premium ingredients and high prices mean success, but success is mathematics, not marketing. I showed them my food truck's numbers. Food cost, 25%. Labor cost, just us, so nearly free at first. Overhead, minimal. Profit margin, 40%. Simple food, properly priced, efficiently served. But we're fine dining, Sarah protested weakly. No, you were fine dining. Now you're a failing business that needs to remember how restaurants actually work. Your food costs are 35% because you waste premium ingredients. Your labor costs are astronomical because you hired for show, not efficiency. Your rent is killing you because you chose prestige locations over practical ones. Dad rubbed his sore hands, looking thoughtful. Your grandfather built Golden Dynasty from a small noodle shop. Exactly, I said. But you all forgot that. You inherited success and assumed it was permanent. Today was lesson 1. Respect the basics. And how many lessons are there? Mom asked, still trying to clean her nails. I smiled. As many as it takes for you to understand what that $50 taught me. Success isn't served on a silver platter. It's cooked up in a food truck, one dish at a time. And then you'll help save Golden Dynasty? Sarah asked. No, I replied, starting to clean the truck. Then I'll help you build something new. Something earned, not inherited. Something that honors grandfather's legacy of hard work, not your fantasy of easy success. As they gathered their belongings, looking shell-shocked and smelling of garlic and sweat, I handed them tomorrow's schedule. 6 a.m., Restaurant Supply Center. You're going to learn about sourcing and cost management. Wear comfortable shoes. Those warehouses are huge. We know about suppliers, Dad protested. We use the finest imported. You use whatever salespeople tell you is premium. I cut him off. Tomorrow, you'll learn the difference between quality and marketing, between value and vanity. They shuffled towards Sarah's BMW, a far cry from the proud restaurateurs who dismissed my ideas a decade ago. But I saw something new in their eyes. Maybe understanding, maybe desperation, maybe both. Oh, and family, I called after them. Don't wash those whites. Wear them tomorrow. In this business, yesterday's stains are tomorrow's reminders of what it takes to succeed. As I watched them drive away, I thought about the long road ahead. They had to unlearn a decade of entitlement before they could learn the real business of food. But maybe, just maybe, there was hope in their blistered hands and wounded pride. After all, I'd built an empire with less. 3 months into their training program, I sat in my office reviewing their progress videos. The transformation was both painful and fascinating to watch, like witnessing butterflies emerge if butterflies had to first work 18-hour shifts in a food truck. The security footage showed Sarah, her once perfectly manicured nails now perpetually stained with turmeric, expertly handling the lunch rush. Gone were her designer clothes, replaced by practical chef's whites. She moved with a new kind of confidence, not the entitled kind she used to wear like perfume, but something earned through sweat and burns. Mom, who once refused to enter restaurant kitchens because they would ruin her silk blouses, now commanded the prep station with surprising efficiency. Her famous disdain for common work had transformed into pride in perfectly julienned vegetables and precisely measured spices. Dad, the man who'd handed me that insulting $50 bill, spent his days learning inventory management and cost control the hard way. No more delegating to accountants. Every penny counted, just as it had for me in those early days. Ms. Chen, Maria's voice interrupted my observations. Your father is asking for a meeting. He says it's urgent. I checked the time, 9:45 p.m. He's still at the food truck. Yes, he's been there since 4 a.m. Tell him I'll be there in 20 minutes. The streets were quieter now, but the food truck's location still hummed with late-night energy. I found Dad sitting on an upturned milk crate, studying a stack of receipts under the street lamp. His expensive watch was gone, replaced by a practical digital timepiece that could withstand kitchen work. Numbers don't lie, do they? I said as I approached. He looked up, and I saw new lines around his eyes. Lines earned from actual work rather than executive stress. Lily, thank you for coming. What's so urgent? He handed me the stack of receipts. I've been reviewing our old numbers from Golden Dynasty, really reviewing them, not just glancing at the accountant's reports. We were bleeding money for years without realizing it. I scanned the papers, though I already knew what they showed. Waste, overpriced suppliers, inefficient staffing, outdated pricing strategies. Should I continue? No, he sighed. You've made your point several times over. He stood up, wincing as his back cracked. I owe you an apology. Just one. Many. He gestured to the food truck. When I gave you that $50, it wasn't just dismissive, it was cruel. I thought I was teaching you a lesson about respecting tradition. Instead, you taught us all a lesson about building something real. I leaned against the truck, remembering countless nights like this, counting receipts by streetlight. You know what's ironic? Everything I learned about business, I learned because you didn't give me the business. He nodded slowly. Sarah told me something interesting today. She said her hands hurt from chopping vegetables, but she's never felt more satisfied with her work. I didn't understand what she meant until I finished these books tonight. And what did you understand? That we didn't inherit a legacy from my father. We inherited his results without learning his process. He built Golden Dynasty from nothing, just like you built this. We thought we were preserving his legacy by keeping things the same, but we were actually dishonoring it by not continuing to build. I pulled out my phone and showed him the latest numbers from Nova Cuisine. Your food truck location is now our highest performing unit per square foot. Care to guess why? He looked surprised. Higher traffic area. No, it's because you three are finally doing what I did, learning every aspect of the business from the ground up. Your food costs are lower, your customer satisfaction is higher, and your innovation rate is better than any other location. Innovation rate. New menu items, process improvements, customer service solutions. Turns out actual experience beats theoretical knowledge every time. Dad stared at the truck, really stared at it, for perhaps the first time. We're starting to understand why you wouldn't just rescue Golden Dynasty, why we had to earn this knowledge. Are you ready to talk about what happens next? He straightened up, suddenly alert. Next. I pulled out a folder, the same one Sarah had brought to my office 3 months ago, but with very different contents. Golden Dynasty's lease on its flagship location expires next month. I'm prepared to make an offer, but not to save it. To transform it. Into what? Into the first collaboration between Nova Cuisine and the real Golden Dynasty legacy. Not the one you inherited, but the one you're earning now. New menu, new concept, new energy, but with the soul of 3 generations of learning. You want us to work with you. His voice cracked slightly. No, I corrected him. I want to work with you. But only if you've truly learned what that $50 was worth. He looked down at his calloused hands, then back at me. I think we're starting to. Then let's talk about real legacy building, not preservation, not inheritance, creation. Are you ready for that? Dad picked up his stack of receipts, his first true lesson in restaurant economics in 30 years of ownership. Yes, and Lily, that $50, I wish I could go back and change that moment. I don't, I said firmly. That $50 was the best investment this family ever made. It just took you 3 months in a food truck to understand why. He nodded, understanding finally reaching his eyes. Your grandfather would have been proud. Not just of your success, but of how you achieved it and how you're teaching us to achieve it too. Speaking of teaching, I smiled, checking my watch. Isn't it time for your night shift? I hear the late night crowd can be quite educational. He actually chuckled, a real laugh, not the condescending one I remembered from years ago. Yes, boss, I'm learning that too. As I watched him climb back into the food truck, this man who once commanded a restaurant empire from a corner office, I thought about legacy, about learning, and about the true value of starting from nothing. Sometimes the best inheritance is no inheritance at all. One year after my family's first day in the food truck, we stood together in front of the former Golden Dynasty flagship location. The old sign had been removed, making way for something new, Dynasty Nova, where legacy meets innovation. Ready? I asked, holding the keys to the front door. Sarah adjusted her chef's coat, no designer labels in sight. Ready. The prep team starts in an hour. Your prep team, I corrected her. You earned the right to lead them. Mom touched the new sign gently. I still can't believe how much has changed in a year. Everything has changed, Dad said, his voice carrying the wisdom of hard-earned experience, including us. We walked through the space that would open tonight as our first joint venture. The design merged modern elements with traditional touches, just like our new menu. But the real transformation wasn't in the decor. It was in the people standing beside me. Sarah had become an innovative chef in her own right, combining traditional techniques she finally mastered with creative twists she discovered during her food truck days. Mom now handled staff training, teaching new employees the same humbling lessons she'd learned. Dad's natural business sense had returned, but this time grounded in practical experience rather than delegation. Remember our first supply run? Sarah laughed, organizing her mise en place. When Mom tried to order truffles for food truck dumplings? And Lily made us calculate the cost per serving and potential profit margin right there in the warehouse. Mom added, smiling. I never thought I'd say this, but that $50 lesson probably saved our family. Not the money, I corrected her. The understanding it forced us to gain. Dad checked his watch, the same digital one he'd worn all year. First staff meeting in 10 minutes. Should we tell them the story? I nodded. They should know what we learned. That success isn't inherited. It's built from scratch. They all finished in unison. The staff gathered in the dining room, a mix of Nova Cuisine veterans and former Golden Dynasty employees who'd stuck with us through the transformation. Some had even trained alongside my family in various food trucks across the city. Dad stepped forward to address them. A year ago, I thought I knew everything about the restaurant business because I'd inherited a successful one. Today, we're opening this new venture because my daughter taught us that real success is built one dish, one service, one lesson at a time. Sarah continued, we're not just combining two restaurant brands. We're combining two philosophies, respect for tradition and courage to innovate. Both earned, never given. Mom added, every member of the Chen family working here has done every job in the restaurant. We've learned that true leadership means understanding every aspect of our business, from washing dishes to balancing books. I stepped forward last. Dynasty Nova isn't just a restaurant. It's a testament to transformation, to learning that sometimes starting with nothing but determination is worth more than inheriting everything without understanding. Looking at my family, really looking at them, I saw no traces of the entitled people who'd once dismissed me with $50 and a sneer. In their place stood restaurateurs who'd earned their positions through sweat, burns, and countless 18-hour days. One last thing, I said, pulling out an old, worn $50 bill from my wallet. This is the bill Dad gave me 10 years ago. I kept it as a reminder. Today, I'm giving it back. I handed it to him. Not because you deserve it, but because you finally understand what it really meant. Dad took the bill, his hands now permanently marked with the calluses of real kitchen work. We'll frame it, put it above the host station, to remind us that true wealth isn't in what you're given. It's in what you build, we all said together. As the staff dispersed to begin prep, I watched my family move to their stations with practiced efficiency. No more corner offices, no more delegating the hard work, no more entitled expectations. The morning sun streamed through the windows, catching the words Dynasty Nova and making them glow. In that light, I could see both what we'd lost and what we gained. The old Golden Dynasty was gone, but something better had taken its place. Something built, not given. Something earned, not inherited. Something worth far more than $50.